Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Ham Nation is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This episode of Ham Nation is brought to you by ICOM. For more information, visit ICOMAmerica.com/HamNation. By DX Engineering. DX Engineering offers practically everything you need to outfit your shack, plus the fastest shipping in the industry. Most in-stock items ship the same day, Monday through Friday until 10 p.m. Eastern. For more information, visit dxengineering.com/HamNation. And by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Home plays a big role in your life. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. It lets you apply simply and understand the entire mortgage process fully, so you can be confident that you're getting the right mortgage for you. Get started at rocketmortgage.com/HamNation.
This is Ham Nation, episode number 324, November 1st, 2017. George takes us into some 15,000-volt transmitters. Good evening, everybody. It's K9EID and a whole group of great people and a whole bunch of people in the chat room. You are tuned in to Ham Nation. It's a wonderful show about ham radio. And we have Gordon West down in good old Costa Mesa. How you doing, Gordo? You are a couple of blocks from a big baseball game tonight. Is that right?
We are. It's like World Series, so I have the blue, and as Don pointed out, I've got the yellow or orange stars. So we're for both sides, and I sure hope someone wins big. This weekend, we encourage everybody to play with Army and Air Force Mars units and the Department of Defense looking for interoperability radio checks about how your county is doing for electricity. Now, this is all based on a scenario of a giant, either an EMP or a massive solar eruption that Tamitha can tell us about. Anyway, Friday evening at 0300 Saturday time. That's Friday 0300 in the evening, our time, all over. Channel 1 on 5 megs, 5330.5. Tune it in right at 0300 UTC Saturday, which is really Friday night. And you'll get all the information there. And then on Sunday, bright and early in the morning, 1600 Zulu time on Sunday, which will be early in the morning here, 14.483.5. Now, don't transmit. That's a military frequency, but they'll give you more instructions on how to report your local conditions to local either Mars or Army Mars or Air Force Mars members. So let's take part in this interoperability. It's all going to take place on our shared 60-meter, 5 megahertz band. So be there, as I'll be there. Bob, back to you.
And we got old Don cooking today, and I guess you're kind of happy. It's like an anniversary for the Saints. Is that right, Don? Don Wilbanks.
It is. It is the 51st birthday of the New Orleans Saints. It was November 1st, 1966, that New Orleans got their NFL franchise, and they named them the Saints because November 1st is All Saints Day. And, of course, New Orleans and the Gulf South being primarily Catholic, All Saints Day is a very important religious holiday down here. So, yeah, we're rooting for the Saints and also rooting for our friends to the west, the Astros, much to the chagrin of Mr. West over there. But that's all right. Nothing wrong with a little rivalry. So, yeah, we're going to have a good time. Dr. T is going to be with us, too. She recorded her video yesterday on Halloween. So she's got a Halloween flavor to her video. You don't want to miss that. That's coming up, Bob.
All right. And George, you have a kind of an anniversary with Martin Jew, and I got to tell you, that's really great. I can't wait to watch the whole thing. So tell us a little bit about that before we break into the rest of the show. George is WD5JDX.
Oh, well, Bob, we had a great time visiting with Martin Jew and Richard Stubbs and the whole crew there at MFJ Enterprises in Starkville. It was back on the weekend of September 30th. Don was there too. Ted Randall from WTWW, just a whole lot of people. We had a great time. You know, every 5 years, MFJ throws a big anniversary celebration, and people from all over flock there to come take free factory tours and, you know, see the Ameritron, the High Gain, MFJ, Cushcraft, all the different MFJ companies. You get to go through and get guided tours of them, see how they make the different things. And Tommy and I finally got our video edited. Yeah, that's a little bit of it. That's Richard Stubbs there. Oh, no, that's not actually Richard. That's, I don't remember this guy's name. I'm sorry, I don't. But that is a wave soldering machine that he was about to use there. Yeah, he sticks the board in one way, well, that's after it comes out right there. But it's a lot quicker than you and I can solder with those Weller soldering irons, Bob. They'll just do the whole board in one pass there. And, of course, they got the surface mount machines, the whole 9 yards there. So we got a great tour of that. Go over to amateurlogic.tv, watch it. I got a really good interview with Martin. You know, he's been at this 45 years. By the way, that's an old rig there from Cushcraft. When they bought it out, that's one of the pieces, or was it High Gain? It was one of those two companies. And that's the, I think that's near World War II vintage piece of gear there that's used for making wiring harnesses and rotors, or was it traps for dipoles? I don't know. It was something. Wow. There's Richard right there. But, yeah, a really good tour. Go check it out. And good interview with Martin. Like I said, I did it 10 years ago, and I got a lot of really good information from him. And we shared it here on Ham Nation. I don't know, it was several years ago. And this is an updated interview. We didn't talk about hardly any of the same stuff. It was completely different. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and wish you could have been there with us, Bob. And I'm going to be back a little later. I spent Halloween at a transmitter site, and yeah, it was a little bit spooky. So we'll come back and talk about that after a while.
Okay. Well, I normally would rip into some pine board stuff, but my plans got changed because you changed them. I got quite a few emails in the last couple of weeks, people wanting to asking questions about antennas. And I didn't think about it, but it is the fall. And after all, I put my 160-meter antenna up about another 30 foot higher a few weeks ago. So it's time to do that. And I thought I'd check in on some things. We've talked about it before. We have talked about a lot of this, but either they didn't listen or maybe they're new. So you can never talk about things like this too much. At least that's the way I look at it. I am so thrilled with what's going on, and I want to bring you up to date with some of the stuff. And here we go. I'm going to do this right here because I'm going to be doing some other things. This is the best thing you can do right here to remember it. You've got to know that frequency and the 468. Divide 468 by your frequency, and it'll tell you what you're going to do on each side of the antenna. This is for half wave. And the other thing that's really cool about this setup, it's so easy to build a dipole. I mean, ultimate easy. And what I've discovered is that a lot of guys and gals, they don't really know, or nobody has shown them how you can put some of these things together. And that's what we're going to do here. There's a little gadget that makes it very easy. You can get this from most of the places. DX Engineering has them, and HRO. I know that Roger at R&L carries them. It's an insulator, and as you can see, it's only a few inches long. And what you do is hook your dipole to that so that the strain is not on the coax. That's the important part of this. And so you want to look at doing that. That's extremely important when you're putting up an antenna. And here's what I want to show you. That's going to go right here. You tie these two because it's insulated, and you tie that milk bone or whatever you want to call it so that there's no strain at all on the coax. And it makes a really nice center addition to this center insulator. It works great. I've got a number of antennas in my my whole deal out here, and it works great. There's one other also. Let me see if I can find this. What happened to it over here? Here we go. This is a really neat little thing you can do by just merely taking a piece of fiberglass, plexiglass, whatever, and drill 6 holes. And that makes a really great center insulator. Then after you do that, you just epoxy the heck out of all around it. I use RTV, bathtub caulk. Works great, but use clear or white, not black. And that makes a really nice center insulator. Carry it one step further, you can put a coax connector in it. And you can do that kind of a deal. And that works well also. And I showed you that a few weeks ago. If you remember, we did a thing with the thermostat wire. That was great. And it works really good. But when you go to put this antenna up, what do you do with it? Well, you can do a number of things with them. This is my favorite, only because I have a lot of trees. But sometimes it doesn't work out that the trees are the right distance apart, so you run a messenger line. I'm using 5/8 Dacron rope, and you can get Dacron rope from all of the suppliers. HRO, it's got a whole thing, a whole display of it. DX Engineering, all of them, they have Dacron rope for you. And you put up the Dacron rope and then wire tie it together, either wire tie. I don't like to use tape. I wire tie it and snug it down, and away you go. You know, it's really a neat way to build an antenna and make it work, and make it work for a long time. But one of the most important things is you're going to put it up. It's going to be there quite a while, we hope. So you want to have really good coax. And you want to check it for standing wave ratio. You want to know if it's tuned. And I always make mine a little longer. And when I do that, then I can really make some things happen by folding back. I don't cut it off. I fold it back upon itself to the length that I need. And I just use it with the transceiver here, put it on AM or RTTY. So I have a carrier and just run it up and down the band. You'll know you don't need an SWR meter, because when you have maximum power coming out of here, it's being transferred. That's how I do it. It works great. But that's just a couple little tidbits that I had. I had a great time, and I want to share it with you. This week, I went Monday to Kansas City, and I spent the afternoon with our dealer, which we've been a dealer for a long time, Associated Electronic Communications, as they call it. Dan and his crew are really good, and they do a lot of little ham fest. I really appreciate that and applaud them for doing it. But I visited with them. We also did a really nice thing with a couple of the gang there. When I walked into the building, look who I saw. Yes, Jim. Oh, yeah, let's show those first. Go ahead and do that first. Yeah, here are a couple of things. This was at Associated Electronics. That's my friend Bob George, good old, almost 6'7". I think he's 6'9". He's a great guy. Been a ham for years. We've been friends. He happened to find this. And then moving around the other corner of the display, that's Dan and I that owns this store. He's been there since the 80s. He has a nice setup in the Kansas City area. Things are really set up nice, and you can experiment with some of the stuff. They bring it out and hook it up and so on. I really appreciated that. They have a nice stock of Heil Sound stuff, so I appreciated that. Really nice to see that, of course. And the meeting that night was great. It was the Kansas City DX Club, and I think there was around 50, 60 people there. And we had a great workshop talking about a lot of things, and it was a fun night. I always learn a lot when I teach these workshops. And, of course, they get to learn a little bit, too. But the next Ham Fest that we went to, or before that, was in St. Louis, the Halloween Ham Fest. It's a small fest, but it's really good. This is my friend Ed, WB4OJM. We're on 160 meters just about every night on 1940. He and Bob George, you just saw there. But that was a nice fest. It was a lot of fun things there. Now, how many people know who that is? That's Jim. He's the guy that builds all of our wonderful Ham Nation signs. And he was there with his display and handing out Ham Nation cards. He's a great supporter of the show, and we like to support Jim. And you need those neon signs. He's the guy. Jim's Engraving. Well, you know I was going to check up on this. They had all these Hachi-Taki things, not me. I didn't look at the Hachi-Tachis. Look at that. Guy built this back in around 1954 or 5. And it's a pine board type project, but he built it on a chassis. And it covered 40, 20, and 80, or 20, 40, and 80, how you want to say it. And that just changed the coil and away you went. That was really cool. Did a nice job. I should have maybe bought it. And Christy was there. Christy got her license recently, and she's a huge fan of Ham Nation and a guy named Gordon West, because she used Gordon's book, and she was so happy. Oh. And I understand. Yeah, you got fans out there. And the really cool part was one of the guys from the club told me what a great job. She's in New Ham, but a great job she's doing in running nets and stuff. So I wanted to give Christy a little wave. So that's cool. That was a fun thing that we did. But now, check this out. It's Jim. AC0KN. And what does he have in his hand? He built the mixer. You remember, oh gosh, it's been a couple years ago now. Jim had built the mixer, as we did, and Randy also built that, but Jim put an amplifier in it. That's what the control is on the side of it there, the little 1-watt amplifier. So a cool job, Jim, and I appreciated you being at the Kansas City show. Isn't that neat? I just love it when you guys and gals build things and make it work. There's just nothing like the great feeling. But I got a little quiz for you. Look at his shirt. His daughter gave him this shirt. And what does that shirt say? You can't see all of it, but you can probably figure it out when you get most of it in the center. Yes. Anybody got it?
Best dad.
World's best dad.
Well, I couldn't quite read the pop.
I hear you. But, it was just so much fun to meet the guys and gals, and it was terrific. I got one other thing I want to show you before I get out of here. You know, you got 2 wires when you're putting up antennas, and something's not long enough. You got to make them longer. How do you do it? Just wind them together? No. I'll show you a neat way. This is really cool. You just take this little guy, and you make a J out of it. That's what I do with it, like so. And you do the other one. And when you do this, causes a little section down in there, you join them together. Then when you join them, after you get them all hooked up like so, you wrap them around each other like so. I'll have to take it down and do this down here just so you get a little bit of an idea. You can probably do it neater than I did. But there's one thing about it, boys and girls. You are not going to have that come apart. It doesn't come apart ever. Just a way to control joining two wires together, because you can do it a lot tighter, but that's a neat way to join two antenna wires if you want to lengthen one or whatever. So those are some of the things. And then I have this. Do you remember the old, I should have got mine out here, the old chipstick? Hey, George sent me this picture. Thanks, George. This is George's for, how many volts is on that thing, George?
About 10,000 volts, and we're actually going to talk about that a little later, too.
Okay. Well, we will. But I caught that picture in one of my emails. I said, I got to talk about that a little bit so you can further it. So that's cool. Oh, that's just some of the little things I've been doing, and I hope that some of that will help a few of you, and we'll continue on. The Pine Board is very popular. I met several guys and gals this weekend that are building, and they're thrilled to death because they'd never built anything before, and isn't that cool? So, Gordo, I know you've been doing some things on the coast, so what's happening in W6 land?
Hi, Bob, and hi to Christy and all your team back there. 5330.5, the frequency on Friday evening to tune in, and you can do that with a dipole 468 divided by the frequency in megahertz. All right, let's take a look at high-frequency operation. Now, we've talked about antennas. In fact, Bob's going to announce, or next week, or maybe I'll announce it, that we're going to be looking for the best show that you enjoyed, because we've got to roll it on a holiday that the TWIT studios is closed. And I like the one where Julian and I were trying to do an HF antenna, and I smashed his car. And, well, that's a funny one for me. But if you've got one, let us know, and we'll try and run it during the vacation. All right, let's take a look at high frequency, which is always fun. But we've already covered antennas, and we've damaged cars, of course, just covering antennas. So let's take a look about mounting your HF radio and battery power. All right, Victor, here we go. These are going to go fast. That's Gary, W6KVS. He and I are getting ready for Quartz Fest, third week in January, and that's where you'll see everything dealing with HF, VHF, and UHF in Quartzsite, Arizona. This is fun when hams play HF on a small rig like this. Everybody was sort of laughing, and then he made a contact on 20 about 1,000 miles away, and that was the end of the laughs. That one worked. Well, you need a good supply of 12 volts, and if you're going to tap off your battery, be prepared to do some constant cleaning, because the battery is always going to gas a little bit. As you can see, it's an open cell one with all sorts of fluid in there that's going to give off gas, and that's going to fuzz up the connection. So double check that your red lead is well connected. And as you'll soon find out, double check that your black lead is well connected. Want to make sure those are solid. Always make sure and fuse, but put the fuse right there at the battery. So anything that happens on between the battery and where your rig is, it's going to be fused. This comes from the hi-fi stereo markets. They are inexpensive when you go to the stereo shops. And those are about 40 amps apiece. Here's a shot of my, well, maybe not mine. It could be my dune buggy. You want to avoid wiring nightmares like this, because instantly they could give you problems. We enjoy the Anderson connectors for those that regularly exercise the Anderson connectors. HamSource and others have some great Anderson connector voltage distribution panels. But if you're drawing just a little bit of current, it's good to exercise those connections. This is a great way to maintain up at repeater sites from HamSource your battery power. So if the battery power is always there and the repeater has an AC power supply problem, you're still on the air with battery. There's the 80 amp version of that. So some great deals out there keeping you on the air with a good voltage. And of course, what you want to see, what your rig wants to see, is 13.3 volts or higher. With the Bioenno batteries, they're going to coast at about 13.9. Those batteries are hot. We saw them up at Pacificon, and they did great in their demos. Here's another good monitor of both voltage as well as current. But something was strange. This fellow was saying everybody was accusing him of a bad signal on sideband, yet his voltage looked very good with only a slight dip, and he just couldn't figure out what it was. Oh, yeah, the display dimmed a little bit, but he had huge leads going to Anderson connectors and going through an Anderson distribution panel. So we took a look at that panel, and we wiggled some of the Anderson connectors, and you should all take a wiggle, even though the score is 5-0, not in favor of the Dodgers. Take a wiggle, and look what happened. We lost the negative lead. Well, how do you lose a negative lead? Well, this was an imported from overseas Anderson connection distribution panel. And what we found was they just sort of tack soldered the negative lead onto the negative side. And anytime you plug in Andersons, you like jam them in there, and bingo, you break the negative lead. And when you break the negative lead, the radio may or may not completely turn off. But in his case, his antenna was well grounded to the chassis of the vehicle. So he was pulling current, return current, all the way through his coax cable to keep the radio on the air. And of course, with that amount of resistance, the radio objected, and his signal sounded like mush on the air. We did a quick test with a little power supply that I had, and sure enough, the problem was with the Anderson connector, and that loose Anderson connector. You should wiggle your connectors and make sure that you've not broken them off the circuit board. Now, a good heads-up display is the way to go. That's Don Arnold W6 GPS. He's got it right there in front of his eyeballs, and this is a great way to go for both APRS, operating your radio, keeping your eyes on the road, as Uncle Donnie will tell you. And, of course, the displays, you want them at eye level because you don't want to be driving down the road at 60 miles per hour staring, wondering what a sailboat is doing in the middle of East 3rd Street. But nonetheless, get your displays up high. Here's a labyrinth of radio gear in this one ham's car, and the displays are low. Hopefully, the operation is going to be done by his passenger, not by the driver, because he'll be looking down. And how many times have you heard about this? Yeah, I had a new remote-mounted head, and every time I transmit, my radio blanks out. No, it's not low voltage. It's not your antenna. It's simply RF getting into that remote's head data line. These will save the day. So if you have a remote head and every time you transmit, the radio blanks out on high power, don't blame the battery. Don't blame the Anderson connectors, maybe. But take a look and do a little bit of RF eradication on that control head's data line. It's also a good idea if you have extra coax, build your own little RF coax choke. Now, this is interesting, although he's got to look 90 degrees to the right to see where he is. But here's a big radio in a mobile vehicle that performed very well. And the radio has an amber display. And, you know, the amber display, a good way to go no matter what kind of dark glasses you're wearing. We'll tell you more about that shortly. And, of course, if your radio is under the front seat and it needs a little bit of ventilation, give it some air. These little whisper fans do a nice job of keeping that 100-watt radio nice and cool. Oh, look at this. We've got radios all set up, and they're ready to roll. But before you decide which radio for you, I encourage you to go down to the local radio store or a friend's radio setup, put on your polarized dark glasses, and see which way comes up correct. On this particular, it looks like a Yaesu installation, it came up correct. I could see it fine, tilt my head to the left, and it disappeared. Yet there are other radio systems out there, especially a lot coming in from well overseas with no name brand, that if you look at them with polarized glasses in the normal mode, you see squat. Turn your head to the left, and then you can read out the display. So make sure that if you wear polarized lenses, that the radio you're thinking of getting, or that laptop, is indeed ready to roll. This I like. He's got it heads up display. It looks like it's aimed toward the passenger. And here's Tom's display. Got everything nice and neat. Not as high as I would normally like to see it, but he's got so much going on above the dash for mapping and so on that that's where the radios are going to be. And he's got the MFJ amplifier, solid state amplifier. He's got a battery right below it, so that amp is going to do well. And of course, anytime you're running an amp in a mobile unit, be prepared for your windshield wipers going, or the guy next door to you honking his horn and he's not even on the horn. Things will happen, especially if you run 500 or 600 watts out. Yes, Henry Radio still makes amplifiers too. And look at the leads going to that amp. Wowee. Make sure your radio is well grounded. This one grounded to the transmission hump, and that's a nice installation, although still it's a little bit low on looking at the display heads up. And look at that, Bob. Hey, Bob, that's a Bob Heil speaker, digital signal processing speaker right there at the operator's level. And here's another setup where they're using the vehicle's system. They actually tapped into it for APRS, and that's a nice high display. You want to get your eyes not down at the hump, but rather up where you can see what's going on. So be thinking safety. And when you're thinking of safety, make sure you're not blocking with your head-high display any of the airbag deployment systems. Most radios are going to give you about 100 watts out on a whistle. If your radio loafs along at 50 or 60 watts as you're talking, that's normal. Maybe give it a little bit more voltage, but we tested all these different radios, and we found out that on an average reading watt meter, not a peak reading, but an average watt meter, the birds, you see them there just to the right of the white, just to the left of the blue, as in Dodgers, which are losing big time. Anyway, during our test, David Lee and I found that most of the power level outputs, they hum around 60, 65, maybe 70 watts on normal voice. And it's only on digital can you get them up to 100. And for vehicles, make sure you either have one ear always uncovered to make sure you're within the rules. And these little earphones do a great job. Just make sure that about once a month you clean out the tube so you don't have perspiration like draining down there. And for HF, the BHI, the BI DSP, noise canceling speaker, or Bob's if you can find it still on the internet, or the clear speaker from West Mountain Radio. These are great for minimizing background hash just by adjusting the speaker, not looking down for safety reasons at your rig, trying to get it into the DSP mode. So the big deal tonight is get your head up, be looking at the road, and enjoy ham radio at the fullest. So I hope to see all of you this coming weekend, or at least hear you on 5330.5. That is our 5 megahertz shared with the military channel 1. And they're going to be there Friday evening at 0300 UTC, as well as on Sunday mid-morning, make that early morning, 14483.5. And let's show the military, as well as Army and Air Force mods, that the hams are out there. When the big one hits, we're ready to fill in and give our county report. So that's my news at this end. So I will now turn it back to Unknown. But here's our next host, WB6 NOA Clear.
Ring in the holidays with D-Star. Looking for the perfect gift to put under the tree this holiday season? Check out ICOM's line of D-Star radios. ICOM offers a variety of high-performance and innovative products. Unwrap ICOM's newest D-Star handheld portable this season. Lightweight, compact, and tough, the new ID31A Plus is a great choice for any shack or those in harsh environments. It's a 70-centimeter radio for both analog and digital, terminal mode and access point mode, and it has an IPX7 waterproof rating. Compact and user-friendly, the ID4100A is the gift any ham would love. It's the new D-Star Mobile with big rig features. Its intuitive interface, variety of operating modes, and Bluetooth capability make this the preferred D-Star option for those on the go. Integrated GPS receiver, new dot matrix display for enhanced DR mode and GPS information, terminal mode and access point mode, and micro SD card slot for voice and data storage. And there's applications for iOS and Android devices. The ID5100A has taken innovation and mobility to the next level. With its touchscreen and internal GPS, this radio is a must-have while assessing a situation. 5.5-inch touchscreen display responds naturally to touch. DV dual watch receives with both FM/FM and FM/DV mode signals simultaneously. Visit icomamerica.com/amateur for more information on all the great ICOM radios. And you can tune in and enter to win after each episode of Ham Nation. Go to icomamerica.com/hamnation and sign up or register to win some great swag prizes like T-shirts and hats. While you're there, learn how you can win in the monthly grand prize drawing for a new radio. And we've got a winner for October. You know, we were giving away the ID4100A, the newest entry-level D-Star mobile rig. We've got a winner. It's John, W4AWE. So congratulations, John. We know you're really going to like that radio. We've got another one we're going to give away in November. This time, it's going to be the ID5100A, dual-band, dual-watch transceiver, a large intuitive touchscreen display, built-in GPS receiver. Of course, it does both analog and D-Star. It's got DV or FM repeater list functions built in, optional available Bluetooth module and headset, and there's an optional free Android application as well, plus a lot more. So go to icomamerica.com/amateur or /hamnation. That's icomamerica.com/hamnation after this in each episode of Ham Nation and register to win. Sign up, good luck, and don't forget to follow ICOM America, Inc. on Facebook and Twitter. And for Smoke and Solder, yes.
Before you start, we need to talk to the chat room about that voting we need them to do. The 27th of December, that's all dark that week. There will be no live shows. However, what the studio is going to do is we want everyone that's watching the show to go vote on it. You can vote on the best Ham Nation you've seen this 5 years, going on 6. Just go to the twit.tv, and he'll show you there. There we go. And up at the top, up in there, yep, show them where to go there and how to get that done. There you go. You fill that all in and tell them the episodes that you would like to see, and that episode will hopefully be the winner. And this is going to be cool to see what comes out, what the consensus of opinions are. So we know what Gordon's is. I don't have one yet. I'm not sure. So I'll have to. It's tough because they were all so great. But check it out and see what you like. There's some really great things, and I won't say what I think because it might sway your vote. We don't want to do that. So that's great, and we hope that you take part in this. Now you have the opportunity to place your vote, and that'll be the show that's going to appear on the 27th of December. And we're going to be here the day before Thanksgiving. There was a question about that. No, we're going to be there. So go look up twit.tv, and up at the top, look for that sheet, fill it out. Maybe we'll all watch that show. So thanks a lot. So, George, I know you got some solder, and I know you got some smoke, but you've been visiting transmitter sites? Oh, boy. I bet those were spooky last night.
Well, it was, and I really hadn't planned on being there. And if you've got your chipstick handy, Bob, you might want to hang on to it there because we might need it in just a minute here. Yeah, yesterday, well, I had to meet a tower crew out at a site to do some work. The heliax that came down, and we're going to have a picture of heliax and real hard line here in the future. I didn't bring it along tonight, but we're going to look at that. Anyway, the connector was bad, and it was at the bottom of the tower there, so they didn't have to climb it. But this crew came from Arkansas, and they didn't, get in town till like 4:30 yesterday afternoon. They were going to change that connector for me, and that meant that that site had to go off the air. Now, there's close to 25 kilowatts that goes through that connector. So, we want it to be okay. I switched over to an auxiliary site and ran much lower power while they took this connector off and took it apart and to go in and replace the seals and gaskets in it. Because it's about an $800 connector. It's not real cheap. But, if you're going to run 25 kW, you're not going to do that with a PL259. Anyway, they had a lot of trouble taking it apart, getting it off the transmission line. And when they did, they couldn't really get the connector apart and then had trouble putting it back on. It ended up, we were out there to close to 9:30 last night wrestling with that connector. The problem was we only had that one connector and, the new rubber seals and all to go inside of it. So if they messed that one up, we were in big trouble. So that was kind of spooky to have that happening on a Halloween. I had planned to be here at the house, helping to eat that bag of candy, but it just didn't work out for me this year. Well, I got a few pictures out from the transmitter site, and we're going to look at just a few of them tonight, and we'll have a few more of them here in the future. The first one we've got here is a picture of Bob's chipstick. Now, this is one that our friend Chip told Bob, hey, you ought to talk about this. And that's version 2.0 there, isn't it, Bob? Because
yes,
I think the first version did not have that resistor in it. It was just, just went straight to ground. And that would work. Certainly, it would work good. And I assume that resistor is there just so you don't draw quite as big a spark when you initially touch it on there. Well, in a broadcast transmitter, they have a stick, too. They don't call it a chipstick. Let's look at this next photo here. This is often referred to as a Jesus stick or a lot of other names. That's the photo's really a little out of scale because of the angle I shot it. But that's the whole rig there is probably, just under 2 feet long. And you can see there's that coily coil coming out the bottom. No, that's not a microphone cable. That's a heavy gauge stranded conductor inside of there that ties to ground. It doesn't go through a resistor. It goes straight to ground because it's touching on the side of a 4CX 15000A tube. That tube is, in this case, it's putting out around 25 kilowatts. The plate voltage on it runs between 8 and 9 kilovolts. So that's quite a bit of energy. And it runs, just under 4 amps too. So, that's a lot of power going there. When you shut that transmitter down, you want to make absolutely certain that there's no voltage remaining or boy, you're going to really hurt somebody bad or if you don't kill them. So that's why most all of these big broadcast transmitters that were tube type came with one of these shorting sticks with it. This one's attached right on the front of the transmitter. And no resistance. It's just, straight to ground. Now, there are interlocks in the transmitter, and we'll look at them in just a second here, that are supposed to help bleed off this voltage and keep it from ever being there in the first place. But this is a safety precaution here because those will stick sometime and don't work just right. And, you can't afford to make a mistake there. So what you're seeing there that the stick is touching, that's the plate of a 4CX 15,000. Right above it, that kind of maroon color is an insulator. And above that, that's gold anodized aluminum. That's the plate blocking capacitor. So that's how it gets the RF off of the tube on up to the transmission line to go out. Let's flip over to the next photo here and look at a high voltage power supply. This is scaled down. I cut some of the extra stuff out just so it wouldn't be quite too much to look at and talk about. If we look over on the left, though, you see that blue square there? That's around T1. That is a three-phase high-voltage transformer. It takes in three-phase 208 and outputs, between 8 and 9,000 volts. Then there's three separate rectifiers you can see drawn on the photo there. Well, in reality, there's a lot of diodes in those rectifier stacks. Yeah, thanks for that, Victor. That makes it a little easier to see. Each one of those blocks, though, is a rectifier stack. I don't remember the exact number of diodes on there, but quite a few because, you got almost 10,000 volts that's got to go through them. Okay, you see the fat black wire leaves out of there. That's going to be the negative. The red wire is the positive. If we follow that red wire on to the right, the other right, yeah, you see it's going through a couple of 100 k ohm resistors there in series, and then that goes on down to the negative terminal. So what we're doing there is we've got 200 k ohms across that power supply all the time. Right to the left of them, you can see capacitor C1 there. That's a 22 microfarad capacitor. Now, you'd say 22 microfarad, that's not very big. Well, actually, this capacitor is, about 18 inches tall and about that deep and about 4 inches wide. When you're putting 10,000 volts on it, a 22 microfarad capacitor can get pretty large. That's the filtering on that power supply. To take the ripple off, that thing will hold quite a punch. So those two 100 k ohms in series there, what that does is it's always putting some load across that capacitor. So when you turn off the high voltage, that capacitor's still got a heck of a charge on it. Those are responsible for bleeding it on down and preventing you from getting a nasty shock. But those things will open up and you won't have anything across that. Also, it's not instantaneous. The moment that you turn off that power supply, those two don't drain it down. It takes a few seconds. So if you've got a plate voltage meter on your transmitter and you watch it, you'll see it takes a few seconds for it to drop all the way on down to zero. Now, in the next photo, if you'll remember, I mentioned a minute ago about the interlocks. Well, inside that green rectangle there's a lot of switches that are tied to ground. Some of them are tied directly to ground. Some of them are drawn similar to a push button. If we could zoom in on that a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And they're also tying the screen supply to ground. What those are is every door on that transmitter has one of these interlock switches. When you take that door off or open it, that switch is supposed to immediately short out that high voltage to ground to prevent you from accidentally getting across it. And that's not a very pleasant thing to see. If the transmitter's up and running and you yank a door open, that's going to make a heck of a flash. But they're there to protect you. Those things can get sticky, and sometimes they don't work. They just don't close. They stay open. That's when that stick there comes in handy to short it out. if we look below or in the next photo there, I've got another circle. This one is purple. And right there is a high voltage meter multiplier. That's a lot of high value resistors in series, and those drop that voltage down before it goes to the plate voltage meter. Because, a meter may say it's got 10 kilovolts on the scale, but no, it's not. So we got to have some way of dropping that voltage down to a reasonable level before we send it to that tiny little meter movement. And that's what that circuit right there is about. Well, that's all I've got for transmitters tonight. I just wanted to talk about a few things there. And while we had the chipstick in mind, I thought I'd talk about the Jesus stick and a little bit about some of the finer points of a high voltage power supply. If you saw, very simple, not much to it, but really dangerous, especially when you get up into the higher voltages. So that's some of the safety features that are built in to broadcast transmitters to protect the engineer or the operator, whoever is going to be monkeying around with it. Well, last week I asked a question straight out of Gordo's General Class Amateur Radio book. And the question was, which of the following is an effect of overmodulation? Is it insufficient audio, or is it insufficient bandwidth, frequency drift, or excessive bandwidth? Well, we had a winner. Michael Standfast, W0NXM, said that, George, the answer is overmodulation causes excessive bandwidth. And that's correct, Michael. So you're going to win your choice of one of Gordo's study guides for amateur radio, either the technician, general, or extra class. I didn't look up to see what class you've got, but if you're a general, hey, well then by all means go for the extra. If you're already an extra, well, why not get that technician and introduce somebody to ham radio, help make another ham there. So Gordo makes the best study material. No matter which license exam you're going to take, you're going to find the information in here. And it's not just questions and answers. You know how Gordo likes to talk and explain things? Well, he does it all through these books. So when you get through, you're not only going to know the correct answer to those questions, you're going to know why that's the correct answer. So thanks for Gordo for making those available. And once again, congratulations, Michael. Well, for next week, I've got something else I'm going to give away. And maybe Bob's not looking right now, but I'm going to give away his headphones. These are the Heil ProSet 3. This pair right here is mine, so I'm not giving them away, but I have a brand new set right here in a box, and we're going to ship those out to somebody. These things, I use them for operating. Bob's got some too. Bob likes them too. They're not really contesting headsets, but if you want to put a pair of headphones, that's great for, operating as well as listening to music. It's hard to beat these ProSet 3s right here. They fit over the ear. They're comfortable, and they really block out the sound. It's hard for me to talk when I've got them on. So that's why I'm going to turn the monitor on my radio and put a little bit of my own microphone gain back in when I'm using these at field day. But really a very nice set of headphones. They fold up super compact. So they fit real easy in your suitcase. You don't have to worry about breaking the cable off because it's got a twist lock on it. Comes right out, and it comes with 3 different sets of cables with it. So this is going to fit not only your 1/4 inch on the front of a rig, it's also got 1/8 inch in case your rig has that or your audio player has that. It's even got a cable made specially to fit the Apple iPhone and iPads. So, a great set of all-around headphones. I highly recommend them because that's the ones I use. If you'd like to win that pair of headphones, then answer this. Why would you use bleeder resistors in a high-voltage power supply? Now, if you think you know that answer, send it to me, hamnationcontest@gmail.com, and you might be getting Bob's headphones right here. And now it's that time in the show where we bring in Don and find out what's going on in the news.
One quick question. What was the power output of that transmitter that you showed with the shorting stick? What was the power output on that?
That particular one's 25 kilowatts. I have another one that looks identical to it. That's a slightly different tube that does 35 kilowatts. And another one that looks identical to it, same tube as this one, that only does 13 kilowatts. So it's all in the power supply, really.
Pretty good size shorting stick, though. Can you imagine the size of the shorting stick that they use on those 100,000 watt shortwave transmitters at WTWW? Oh my God, it must be the size of a baseball bat. Just amazing. And by the way, hello to those listening tonight on the big WTWW 5085 with that 100,000 watt monster signal and 12.105 going into Africa. If you want to email WTWW, any of your ham radio stuff, it's email at WTWW.us. They'd love to hear from you. And anything ham radio related you want mentioned on the radio station, they'll be more than happy to do that. Well, let's talk about DX Engineering, and let's talk about antenna performance, because when it comes to antenna performance, knowledge is power, and there's no better way to take the guesswork out of tuning, troubleshooting, and fixing your antennas and feed lines than with a quality antenna and cable analyzer. And DX Engineering carries a huge selection from the world leader, that is Rig Expert, including their family of Zoom analyzers. They have the AA35 Zoom, covers up to 35 megahertz, the AA55 Zoom, which covers up to 55 megahertz, and the AA230 Zoom, which covers up to, say it with me now, 230 megahertz. So pick your favorite flavor. Here are some of the ways to take full advantage of these essential tools for your station. The Zoom analyzers are ideal for checking your coax cable assemblies, measuring vital antenna stats like SWR, impedance, return loss, capacitance, or inductance of the reactive load. Use them for rapid checkout of antennas like tuning an antenna to resonance, SWR, and impedance comparison before and after a specific event like rain or winter weather. Use them to find fault locations and a whole lot more. They feature simple interfaces and self-explanatory menus and keyboard markings that make them perfect for hams. The results are graphically displayed on a 320 by 220 color TFT screen. Their unique zoom in function will allow you to view graphic points up close for even clearer analysis. And the analyzers provide measurements for 25, 50, 75, and 100 ohm systems. You can also move across the frequency range in 1 kilohertz steps, and the minimum sweep range is 10 kilohertz. Choose from several easy-to-use measurement modes, including the Rig Expert's SWR to air, which works by transmitting the SWR measurement on a user-specific frequency so you can hear it on an HT. Just listen to the length of the audio signal to determine the SWR value. And Rig Expert Zoom analyzers have a memory function for graph storage, waterproof keypads, multilingual menus, and help screens, a USB link to your computer, which unlocks more features, SO239 female connectors. Power is provided by AA batteries or 5-volt USB port, so you're never without power. DX Engineering offers combo packages that let you purchase both a Rig Expert analyzer and a sturdy case to keep it safe. And, of course, they have custom-designed Nanook equipment cases are available for all 3 of the Zoom models and the other Rig Expert analyzers as well. Each case is filled with the cubed, sectioned foam so you can create the ideal padded space for your analyzer for a perfect fit. DX Engineering, as you know, ships faster than anybody else in the industry. Most orders placed by 10 p.m. Eastern Time are shipped the same day. Proven products, expert advice. DX Engineering helps you shrink the globe. Request your catalog, shop online 24/7, 365 at dxengineering.com/hamnation. dxengineering.com/hamnation, and we thank them so much for their support of Ham Nation and being part of the family. Why don't we go ahead and get into the news of the week from Amateur Radio Newsline, shall we? From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2087, these are the Ham Nation headlines for Friday, November 1st, 2017. We begin this week's newscast with yet another hurricane report. This historic weather didn't hit the Caribbean, but landed instead in Ireland, where ham radio response was informal but effective.
The names Ophelia and Brian won't be forgotten for quite some time in Ireland. The 2 storms swept over the nation in mid-October, with Brian coming on the heels of its deadlier counterpart. Ophelia's arrival generated Ireland's first severe weather alert in history, and according to the Irish Independent newspaper, even created the biggest wave recorded off the Irish coast during a weather event. It also left 3 dead. Although the Amateur Radio Emergency Network was not formally called up for the storm, members nonetheless took to internet chat and whatever repeaters they could find, or made use of simplex calling channels to check on the well-being of people in their communities and beyond. John Ronan, EI7IG, told Newsline the hams had earlier tracked the storm and advised RN members to prep for water shortages, outages, and to get their go kits ready just in case. He told Newsline in an email that once the storm subsided, the hams were able to power up their generators and make use of batteries on hand to conduct health and welfare checks. He said some WinLink messages were also exchanged with RayNet members in the UK. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Ed Durant, DD5LP.
The Atlantic hurricane season continues through the end of November. The launch of a new satellite is almost here.
They're counting down the weeks at AMSAT until the next Fox 1 satellite goes up. It's called RAD-FX-SAT, and its date with Earth's orbit is the 10th of November. When it takes off from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, the satellite will be carrying a 435 and 145 megahertz FM transponder, one of 4 CubeSats riding as secondary payloads on board the Joint Polar Satellite System. The satellite features a Fox 1 style FM UHF VHF repeater with an uplink on 435.250 megahertz and a CTC SS of 67 hertz. The downlink is on 145.960. The DUV subaudible telemetry stream will be used for downlinking satellite telemetry as well as telemetry from the study on radiation effects on commercial components. Fox Telem software can be used for decoding. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Jerry Goodrich, KF5KRN.
In Australia, one amateur got a bit of a surprise when he caught up with a live ham TV transmission from the International Space Station.
Now, here's a QSO to remember. Picture Tony Hutchison, VK5ZAI, an Australian ground station for the Ham TV amateur television project, in communication with Italian astronaut Paolo Nespoli, IZ0JPA. The contact was made in mid-October in the first live Ham TV transmission to be received in Australia from the International Space Station. It's not so hard to picture, actually, even though Tony himself didn't expect any images to come through. He told the Wireless Institute of Australia that the video transmission was a total surprise as the ISS made its low elevation pass over Australia. He thought at most he'd get a black screen, but there was Paolo rehearsing for an interview he was to have later with the Italian Red Cross. Tony immediately grabbed some still imagery from the screen and also made a video recording. The recordings have since been sent to other Ham TV equipped ground stations in Australia as well as Europe. That's sure one fancy QSL card. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm John Williams, VK4JJW.
For the rest of this week's Amateur Radio News, please listen to the full Amateur Radio Newsline report online, on a repeater near you, or on shortwave radio station WTWW at 9930 and 5085 kilohertz. And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at www.arnewsline.org. With Ed Durant, DD5LP, Jerry Goodrich, KF5KRN, John Williams, VK4JJW, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wellbanks, AE5DW. 7-3. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation. Now, here's the solar update with Dr. Tamitha Skov.
The space weather is really quiet this week, which is a far cry from what it was a couple weeks ago, but it won't last. We have a coronal hole that's going to be rotating into the Earth strike zone. Will it give us a solar storm in time for Halloween? Those stories and more in the news this week. Despite having a couple really good solar storms over the past 2 weeks or so, the space weather this week has gotten really quiet, but it's not going to last. We have a coronal hole that's going to be rotating into the Earth strike zone here in the next day or so. It's sending us some fast wind, and it should pop us up into storm levels, maybe not in time for Halloween. But there's nothing cooler than getting pictures of spooky aurora over a graveyard near this time of year. Switching to our M-flare threat meter, you can see we've been extremely quiet. This is a trend that's been going on for quite some time. We're well below the sea floor, so the X-ray flux is very low. This also means the solar flux is kind of at low levels. We did momentarily have an M1.1 flare that fired from old region 2673. This was that region that was an X-flare player back in September. But when it actually rotated into view, we thought, wow, is this thing beginning to act up all over again? No, it's not. It just kind of died off, and we haven't seen anything since then. So things are going to continue to be quiet like this for the foreseeable future. Switching to your solar storm conditions, you can see back on the 11th, we got hit with some fast wind that gave us some decent solar storming. The storming actually lasted about 5 days, nearly a week, and we bumped up to even moderate level storm conditions for a while. After that, things kind of quieted down till about the 24th, where we got popped again by some more fast wind. This is going to be pretty common during this declining phase of the solar cycle. And we bumped up to storm conditions not quite as strong and not quite as long lasting, but it's still gave us some decent aurora. Now things have quieted down. It's gotten extremely quiet, but again, this won't last. We're expecting that fast wind to hit us again here in the next few days. And the last couple solar storms have brought us some gorgeous aurora all around the world. I can't possibly show you all the pictures, so here's just a sampling. We'll start with some gorgeous aurora that was sandwiched with this bubble-like atmospheric effect due to a Russian missile launch. And this was in Russia, obviously. But you could also see that atmospheric effect as like a blue aurora even in Sweden. And then there's gorgeous aurora we saw in Norway. There's a couple places in Norway. We saw it in Shetland and the Isle of Lewis. We saw it in Northumberland in the UK. And we move across the pond. We see it in Canada. Here's Manitoba and Saskatchewan and Alberta. And if we drop into the United States, we saw it in Montana, in Washington State, and it even reached as far south as Wyoming. So what else does the sun have in store for us this week? Well, this is stereo A. It's our backside monitor. You can see here's Earth, here's the sun, and here's stereo A staring at the sun from behind. And what you can see is the sun, even on the backside, is pretty quiet right now. We do still have that coronal hole that gave us some activity about a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now. It is going to be rotating back into Earth view, so it could give us some more solar storming here, maybe the middle of November. Now, we also have an active region that's been spitting off a little bit of stuff. It's been maintaining a bit of brightness here, and it will be rotating into Earth view here in the next week. So at least the solar flux will stay up for you amateur radio operators. Switching to your solar storm conditions and aurora possibilities over the coming week, we are anticipating the hit from that fast wind from that coronal hole that's rotating into the Earth strike zone. At high latitudes, NOAA's expecting us to reach storm conditions around November 2nd with about a 30% chance of a major storm. At mid latitudes, we're only expecting about active conditions with only a small chance of a minor storm. And these conditions should last in through the early part of the weekend and then probably die off reasonably quickly, so that by the beginning of next week, we should be back to quiet. Switching to your solar flare and particle radiation storm outlook over the coming week, everything is in the green. We have no threat for radio blackouts this week. That's good news for you GPS operators, but for you amateur radio operators, it's a bit of a different story. We are getting to the low end of the solar flux for marginal propagation of ham radio, and this is going to continue easily for the next week. As a matter of fact, it might even worsen for the next week until we get a little bit of boost in the solar flux. So the space weather this week has been pretty quiet, but it is picking up. We have that fast wind from that coronal hole that's rotating into the Earth strike zone, and it should be bumping us up to storm levels here in the next few days. So you aurora photographers, get your cameras ready, because you might be able to catch some enchanting and haunting shots just in time for Halloween. Now, you amateur radio operators, you may not be faring quite so well because the solar flux continues to decline and will so probably through the rest of this week. So if you can make it through this weekend, you'll be all right, because then the solar flux might bump back up a bit. So it may not be quite as exciting a Halloween for you. But as for me, I finally get to put on my favorite Halloween costume. I'm the Eclipse. Can you tell? I'm Tamitha Skov. Thank you for watching.
Oh, we are so lucky to have her on our team. Thanks, Dr. T. Awesome information, as always, and just the absolute best from Dr. T. Hey, Bob, I'm thinking about my favorite episode, and after watching Dr. T, and of course we've got Amanda coming up in the chat room, and Val, I think my favorite episode has got to be the Hams Gone Wild, where it was ladies' night, and we let the ladies rule. We need to do that again. That's my favorite episode. That's my vote, Bob.
Yeah, I don't know how you coerced Tamitha to join us each week. That's a lot of work for her, but I'll tell you what, she is one amazing lady, and I appreciate you getting all that set up and doing it each week, Don. It's a lot of information.
We appreciate her.
That's the whole, and it's information you don't see anywhere else. That's the cool part.
Yep, absolutely.
So, thanks. Well, I agree with you for that show, but there's another lady that's pretty special too, and she lives out in the rocks of somewhere like Colorado or something. Amanda, how you doing, lady?
Oh, we're doing good. We're doing really good, actually. Loving the weather, loving the fall time. Couldn't ask for more around here. So, and there's not a lot of snow yet. So, let's see what's going on in the chat room. The first thing was mentioned, and this, of course, if Valerie was here, she would have said sweepstakes is coming up this weekend. So make sure your setup is ready to go. Work those North American stations and have a good time. That is always a fun kind of contest, and I think it's one of the better ones to kind of get yourself involved in if you want to go contesting and do that kind of stuff. So let's move on from there. George, this question is for you. Which VON do you consider to be the best all around for 1,000 VAC or VDC?
For around 1,000 volts. Well, I don't keep a lot of those in my head as far as model numbers. I'll tell you one I think will go that high. I'm not positive because I can't see it from here, but I really like my old Simpson 260 meter. It's an old analog meter. They've been making them for decades. I think they still make them. You can find them at Hamfest sometimes. You can find some that have been rebuilt, which mine was one of those. That you can probably get a good deal on. But depending on what you're going to be doing with the meter, if you need to see, changes in real time on the voltages, then, you're probably going to want an analog meter. If you're like me, you're probably going to want both an analog and a digital. And my favorite digital meters are probably the Fluke meters. They have a line now that's a little less expensive in a handheld. I've got one I keep in my toolbox that I carry with me all the time. I believe it will go to 1,000 volts. Unfortunately, I don't remember the model number, but I think it's like a 115 or 117, something like that. But it's less than $200. Fluke's known for making really accurate gear. And, those are probably my two favorite meters. Although I'll have to say that I've got an old digital multimeter that came from Radio Shack probably 20 years ago, and I use it, I think, as much as I use anything else. And the accuracy is pretty much right there with the others.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. And so this, Bob, this is a personal question that we ran into this issue, which we haven't ran into in a long time. You guys ever been trying to make a contact, or you start talking to someone on HF and they say, there's a lot of RF on your signal? That happened to us this weekend working the DX contest. Blew us away. We haven't had RF in our signal in forever. So Bob, here's the rundown. We're pushing 500 watts, running the 7600. We've got the A4S, so the Cushcraft antenna going. And we couldn't make a contact with some of these easy ones like Aruba, Bonaire. They couldn't hear us. And then finally one of them says, they worked us. They said, but you got a lot of RF in your signal. What's the first thing you do to start problem solving that? Where do you start?
That's a toughie. It really is, because it can be so many things, especially when it's been clean all along, right? And all of a sudden it pops up. There's no real one fix for it. We could get into this whole grounding issue. That's what it's all about, really. But if it was working for a long time, then you might want to go back. And I had an issue on my AM transmitter about 3 months ago. And, every morning I'm in here, turn it on, it works fine. Came in one morning and it was just crazy. I could see it on the scope, all kinds of nonsense that wasn't my voice. So I took my old, these little babies. My dad gave them to me years ago, right here. And you go tighten, not finger tighten, and not break it off, but tighten down every one of your connectors. Now, before you do it, back it off a couple of turns, then tighten it down. And I did that. Oh, I can't tell you how many connectors there are back here, because there's 35 relays in this system. But I did the AM transmitter shelf, and it was gone. So evidently, one of those connectors got flaky and wasn't making a good ground, and I tightened them all down. That's about the first place you want to start. And the second place is to check your microphone cables to make sure you don't have a break in it, or that it's come loose up in the connector, and that connector's tight. Stuff like that. That's where you start, right there.
Okay, and we kind of started with bypassing the amplifier and going back down to 100 watts or less. And I think that Jeff, can you back me up on this? My engineer here, I think he says, yeah. He what? I said the first step. Oh, well, and Jeff said the first step is to fire the engineer in the ham shack. So that was the step he wanted to take and wanted to walk out the room. But if you can't do that, we did turn down the power a little bit. I think that started to help our signal. We asked some other people to listen. We turned on another rig nearby and listened on the headphones, and our signal sounded clear. So again, very frustrating stuff. And Jeff has more input. What? And Jeff agrees with you, Bob, grounding. We need to look at better grounding. So, but it's frustrating when everything, you make it through every pileup you've ever tried, and then the week of the DX contest, nada, nah. But anyhow, speaking of the DX contest, one other thing I wanted to mention, we talked to some Hawaiian, some Hawaiians that were in the contest, NH6JC and NH6HI, and they were big fans of Ham Nation, and they recognized our call signs right away, and they said, thanks for the show and love to hear you guys. So thanks for letting us work you. Okay, the next thing, I just have some nets to talk about. We have the 20-meter net. Steve's going to give it a go on 14268. We've got Kevin on 7192 listening out for you. And then we have our digital. We have DMR TAC 311 and D-Star 14 Charlie. And don't forget the Echolink on Dewdrop In. So with that, I think we have Don with another message from Rocket Mortgage, right?
Yeah, we got to talk about Rocket Mortgage. Nobody likes a mortgage, but it's a fact of life. You got to have one. Sometimes you have more than one. Well, that's why there is Rocket Mortgage. That's why Quicket Loans created Rocket Mortgage. The mortgage experience wasn't keeping up with the times. It was dated, needed a client-focused technological revolution, frankly, and that's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. Rocket Mortgage gives you the confidence you need when it comes to buying a home or even refinancing your existing home loan. It's very simple. Allows you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. It's convenient. Their trusted partners allow you to share your financial information with Rocket Mortgage at the touch of a button. It's very powerful whether you're looking to buy your first home or your 10th home. Rocket Mortgage is able to perform thousands of calculations in seconds. And based on your income, assets, and credits, Rocket Mortgage will analyze all of the home loan options for which you qualify and find the one that is perfect for you. Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Apply simply, understand fully, mortgage confidently. And to get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/hamnation. That's rocketmortgage.com/hamnation. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states. NMLS consumeraccess.org, number 3030. And Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Thank you so much for your support of Ham Nation. Bob, back to you.
Something I want to talk about. I just got an email. I just opened it up here from my good friend Gary. Gary's got a big signal out of Lake Havasu, a K9WZB. I'm sure you've heard him on. He's got a big signal. But he's doing one of my favorite things this November 4th through the 14th, this weekend. It's a lighthouse. It's just a wonderful, wonderful situation. You can go in and work all 25 of them. There's 25 lighthouse replicas along the coast of Lake Havasu and the Columbia River. And each one of them will be represented by a special event call in a N7A all the way through N7Z, kind of like the Route 66 thing. I love those. And for more information and the individual information on lighthouses, you can go to QRZ.com or just search for N7A through N7Z. It's really, really a great thing to do. I love that event. So check it out for the lighthouse happenings this weekend. They'll be all over. So you hear big pileups. It's probably N7A. Well, it's been a good, fun show. I forgot to tell you, George, there's my meter. Been with me for how many years? Oh, my gosh, I don't know. This one's kind of special. It's got a barn door on it.
Roll top.
Yeah, I got a roll top. Oh, come on here. Yeah. Trying to hold it, do it at the same time. This thing is heavy. That's the only thing. Isn't that cool?
Yep.
Very rare. And I've had it from, I don't know, back in the maybe 60s, 70s. I had it rebuilt here a few years ago, and I love my Simpson 260. I bet you have one of those too, don't you, George?
I don't have the case, but yes, I have a 260 with a mirrored scale, which is also a very nice find. You know, I found it at a ham fest by a guy who had rebuilt a lot of them, and I think I paid, I don't know, around $80 for it. It was well worth that to me.
Got that right. Okay, everybody, it's been really fun. We'll catch up with you next week right here. Look for your favorite episode. Go up to twit.tv and pull down the form and send it in. We want to know what you think about the best of the best. We appreciate you looking in and being a part of this. We have so much fun putting it together. We're strictly amateurs. We have more fun, but yet as I get around and all of us get around, everybody really likes what's going on, and there's tens of thousands of listeners and viewers. So thank you very much for supporting all of the people that support us. 7-3, we'll see you on the Afternets in just a few minutes. So bye-bye for now. This is K9EID and the entire Ham Nation family. So long.
Bop, bop.